Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 96. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday, Steelers Nation. Hopefully everyone had a great and fun weekend, Dave. Things are finally going to pick up in the NFL and Pittsburgh Steelers news cycle. The Combine on the horizon. We have boots on the ground at Indy for the 2025 NFL Combine. We'll hear from Omar Khan tomorrow. We'll get workouts on the field beginning Wednesday and then ending through the weekend on Sunday. Got some Matthew Stafford news, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, Dave, have made a new signing, a new addition to their offseason roster, inking tight end Donald Parham to a 1-year contract. So we'll talk about him. So things are really going to start picking up here pretty quickly.
Yeah, good time for that as well too. I got to ask though. I made sure to kind of let you lay low over the weekend. Did you watch both of the Pirates' first two spring training games?
Most of them, yeah. I caught the start of both games. Pirates 2-0, so World Series.
Break up the Pirates. Yeah, I watched the first game against who was it, Baltimore the other day and all. And it's not a great time to be a Pittsburgh sports fan right now, is it? Because it looks like the Penguins are, I think, done for pretty much the season. It'll be interesting to see how they attack the trade deadline. But people don't tune into this show to talk about baseball or hockey. So yeah, let's get to the newest addition to the roster.
We'll stay in our lane and focus on the Steelers and Donald Parham Jr. signed to a 1-year contract. Dave, you can offer contract details. Most notably known for playing for the LA Chargers from 2020 to 2023, the big 6'7", 6'8" target, formerly a Stetson College, had a pretty good run with the Chargers and then spent last year, 2024, with the Denver Broncos on the practice squad, did not appear in a game for Denver. But interesting, big tight end for a Steelers team that likes their tight ends big.
Yeah, and I don't know if the Steelers will get or Pittsburgh will get an NBA team pretty soon, but if they do, they've got a couple of big boys they could have on that in two tight ends, obviously in Washington and Parham. Overall, this is an addition to the tight end room, and it's a cheap signing. It's a guy that's got 4 years, 4 seasons playing experience in the NFL. I think coming out of what was it, Stetson College originally with Parham as an undrafted free agent with the Detroit Lions. He only lasted not long after being signed undrafted and was cut loose, and then went to Washington. I think spent the rest of the rookie preseason with him, and then was cut loose and went over to the XFL, I guess, with Arlington, and was kind of a standout player, if you will, I think, overall with the in the short amount of games that that league had there. And he did enough to get himself latched on with the Chargers, and spent the last 4 seasons with him, put up some okay numbers, I guess. What did he have in total there? It was 67 catches over 4 seasons with the 11 touchdowns on 100 total targets, 764 yards in total. And looked at both of his snap totals over the 4 seasons, logged little over 1,200 offensive snaps with the Chargers, and just 98 snaps on special teams in total. Now, his first 2 seasons, 38 snaps on special teams, and 60 in the second season, 2021, on special teams. The last 2 seasons, he did not see any special teams snaps when it comes to them. More of a move tight end. I don't think he's very much of a blocker despite his size. He's more kind of on the thinner side for sure. Kind of reminds you of who was a tight end from a couple years ago. came out.
Sternberger?
No, oh, I'm
The
drawing a
Steelers
blank.
tight end? You can give me a little bit of
Yeah,
information.
yeah, about 5 years, 6 years ago that ended up with a
Ebron?
with the concussion, the one with the
Ladarius Green.
yeah, Ladarius
Alright, we
Green,
got you.
kinda, we got there. Kinda reminds you a little bit of a Ladarius Green type player, I guess, overall there. So, the contract is a veteran benefit contract for the minimum, comes with a reduced, salary cap charge there. I think they used about 190,000 in actual rule of 51 salary cap space, when it comes to signing him. He's got his work cut out for him when it comes to making the roster. Now, the team, Michael Pruitt is an unrestricted free agent this offseason. I don't know about. I mean, we'll see if they ultimately re-sign Pruitt to another veteran benefit deal. But either way, Parham's going to have his work cut out for him to make the roster as a extra tight end.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see the landscape of it all. It's a different dynamic. I mean, he's got the same height as a Darnell Washington. Like you said, they can be, center power forward combo for the future Steelers NBA team, but he's not going to be the blocker. He's not that big bodied. He's kind of that thinner joker tight end, that move tight end that's become more in vogue. That was his primary role with the Chargers. And potentially, if he makes the Steelers roster, could have the same purpose in Pittsburgh, which loves themselves a good 12, 13 tight end set with Michael Pruitt, as you said, being a free agent. I doubt he returns. Brought over Arthur Smith connection, but had bad knees, missed some time. Did a nice job as an inline blocker, but probably won't be coming back. And of course, Connor Hayward, he's athletic, but really struggled to find a role. Could Parham potentially have a bigger role? Potentially, but that's all going to be stuff down the road. Should note on those special team snaps, primarily just on the field goal team. So one of the wings, I
Okay.
assume, like Darnell Washington, not running down kicks or punts or anything like that, but just kind of using his size and his wingspan to widen those edge guys, I'm assuming, on the field goal rush team with Parham on the field goal protect team. So, yeah, I mean, it's worth a flyer. It's interesting that he couldn't get any sort of role in 2024. I don't know if he had a bad summer, if he had some injuries or just, circumstance didn't align. But for a guy that was fairly productive in 2023 with the Chargers, 27 catches, 4 touchdowns. I mean, those are some decent production overall. So to see him not be able to get a helmet for a game in 2024 is interesting, but still young. Like I said, just a unique body type for the position. Pittsburgh, I think, likes those types of guys, and so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I forgot to note within there, he spent the 2024 season. He went to I guess training camp with the Chargers last year and all, and then they cut him right before the start of the 2024 season, and then he found himself on the Denver Broncos practice squad and stayed there all season. Didn't even get a single elevation with them from what I can tell there. So kind of a weird situation for a guy as experienced as he was to go to a team and then not only stick on a practice, because we all know how practice squads can shuffle throughout a season. You might go off, they
Mhm.
might need the space for someone else and all like that, but for a guy to stick on a practice squad for the experience that he had and not find himself and obviously injuries, they probably were fairly healthy overall at the tight end position, but didn't even get elevated. So he spent the entire season on the Denver Broncos practice squad. So and we don't know whether or not he was offered a futures contract or not. Probably wanted to check out what the landscape was before automatically re-signing, and probably saw that there wasn't much out there, and the Steelers probably said, "Hey, you're more than welcome to come to our off season with us and see how things work out for a minimum contract." And he probably jumped at that with a little less than 3 weeks to go before the start of the regular season, and we start seeing a lot of movement around the NFL.
There any connections between Parham and the Steelers' current coaching staff? Was Tom Arth there with the Chargers? He was there in 2022 and 2023, so maybe a little bit of a connection there loosely, but Arth was the pass game specialist with LA when Parham had some of his success, and so that's just a little nugget worth noting. But yeah, red zone threat. I mean, that's going to be the easy thing to talk about with Parham. He's got 11 career touchdowns. I think 9 of those have come inside the red zone. Something like 7 have come inside the 10-yard line. And so his size, some of those you watch a couple of the cut ups, not all jump ball situations, but just overall 6'7", 6'8" tight end near the goal line. That's going to be attractive, though one could argue Darnell Washington underutilized in some of those moments this past season. But yeah, it's a low. Obviously, it's basically no risk. Interesting guy with some NFL experience, production, a little bit of pedigree. Certainly worth checking out, assuming he is carried into the offseason and enters Latrobe with the rest of the training camp squad.
Right. And nothing guaranteed at all, as far as I can tell, with his contract. So this is a very, very low risk signing. And look, they've got a lot of spots on this offseason roster to fill up. And so he'll be one of them for at least for the immediate future here.
All right, Dave, where to from here? Let's talk. We've talked about it before, but I think this is the first time we can actually have a more, I don't want to say sincere conversation, but realistic conversation about LA Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford. Previously, all the talk about Stafford, could he get traded, really felt to me like speculation. There wasn't really any teeth to the rumors of Stafford being on the move. That all changed really, I think, Friday when a report came out. The Rams had permitted Stafford to gauge his value and speak to other teams to understand what his market could be, what his value could be. Now, the reports tried to point out this was not a trade request, but listen, if Stafford's talking to other teams, it'd be like if Tiff came up to you and said, Dave, start talking to other men to gauge my value. It's a weird situation. So anytime that door opens, it starts signaling potentially, there could be some movement there. And further reporting from Tom Pelissero today indicates that the trade compensation with teams have been discussed. Now, again, they're still adamant the Rams would ideally like to keep Matthew Stafford contractually. That's going to be the sticking point. Albert Breer reporting today for his Monday morning quarterback column, the Steelers have shown interest in Matthew Stafford. To what degree, we do not know, but those dots are beginning to connect. And so I think, again, you can actually really have a sincere conversation and possibility of Stafford being on the move.
I think a better analogy is if my wife came to me and said, "Go out and judge judge your free agent."
I think Stafford's market's a little more active than the Dave Ryan market.
Yeah, broken down, high maintenance. Go ahead, go check what your value is, and bring back whatever offer sheets that you get that way. Look, this obviously Matthew Stafford, is going to play somewhere in 2025. He obviously can still get things done as a quarterback at his age, though. It just kind of plays into the Aaron Rodgers discussions that we've had. Not the most mobile guy. More mobile than Aaron Rodgers, I think, based on what I remember from this past season and all. I think one of the things that I keep going back to when I think about Matthew Stafford is the guy can still drill the football in all areas of the field, can still hit, I think, those cover two hole shots, obviously not afraid to throw towards the middle of the field. It's like he's got a third eye in his head as well, too. How many times over the last couple of years have we seen him looking one way and kind of throwing the ball in a direction that he's not looking, and just knows where his receivers are going to be? Obviously has had a good receiving crew the last several years with the Rams, with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp over there as well, over there. So he still has value. He's still his overall quarterback value is still easily probably within top 15 of the league. You do have to wonder, though, if this is just a sense of the Rams saying, look, go out there and get a true sense of your value right now. It's hard to imagine the Rams being able to compete in 2025 without, what would their quarterback, I don't want to go too deep into this, but man, you look at this quarterback class and all like that, what would they do if they did not have Stafford back? It's hard to imagine them being able to upgrade that, what they have currently with Stafford, at least in this single offseason, for 2025. So, and I know there's been other reports out there. What Graziano come out, I think this morning or yesterday, and say that he expects some sort of kind of resolution potentially at the combine or not long after the combine, and this might just be a ploy by the Rams to really find out what the trade slash market value is for Matthew Stafford. As far as his fit in Pittsburgh goes, like we kind of said with Aaron Rodgers, if you go roll back to all the things that Mike Tomlin has talked about with the quarterback position and how important quarterback mobility is, it doesn't line up to me. And I think the most intriguing thing about Matthew Stafford potential, if you were to work through all that aspect of it, I think the most intriguing aspect about Matthew Stafford is could you get him to come to Pittsburgh on, say, like a 2-year, somewhat reasonable deal, and could you get Cooper Cup to come along with him? Because of the obviously the relationship that those two have with each other. Could you surround Matthew Stafford with a good enough offensive line and running game to utilize what he still can do good at the NFL level? Once again, I think this is a guy that can still wing the football. Obviously has played enough games and understands protections and coverages and things of that nature. And it kind of somewhat you would kind of have to build your offense kind of similar to what Arthur Smith had several years ago in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill over there. Although I think it gives you a little bit more from a passing standpoint, because I don't think Stafford's washed. I still think he can put the football down the field and stretch the field that way. So it's intriguing to think about, especially if you can get past the notion that Mike Tomlin wants his quarterbacks to be mobile. If you're going to build a more traditional, I guess, kind of pocket passer type situation, limited kind of rollouts and those kind of things, it is intriguing to think about. But at my heart of hearts, Alex, I just, it's hard for me to get past the Rams actually moving on from Stafford.
I get that. I mean, a couple points. I think I would liken it more to Arthur Smith's first year in Atlanta with a Matt Ryan, who was, how
There
old
you
was that?
go.
Matt Ryan, 36 that year. They went 7-10. Ryan threw for just under 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 12 picks. Similar numbers to what Stafford put up this year. So I think Tannehill, a little more athletic, was younger back then. My whole contention has been, yeah, why would the Rams want to do this? But can you put this toothpaste back in the tube? If you're talking trade compensation, which according to Pelissero, there's been some discussion about that. If you're letting Stafford gauge his value to other teams and try to get an understanding of the contract, at what point do you feel like you've parted ways with the guy? I mean, I get it. I don't know what the Rams are going to do if they dump and move Matthew Stafford. I assume they're going to sign a veteran. Maybe they sign Justin Fields or somebody like that. Who knows? But I just feel like if we're getting to this point where trade compensation's being discussed and he's free to speak with other teams, those are some pretty strong signs he's not coming back.
Yeah, but money soothes all ill wills, I think, at times too. So, if they offered him enough money, and I don't think, uh, from what's out there, I just think this is business to check out what the guy's value is.
But if money was such an issue, they wouldn't need him to go talk to other teams. If the Rams were just okay paying basically, whatever Stafford wanted somewhere in that range, they would just get a deal done. Obviously, there's the issue is the contract of getting that done. That's why Stafford would be on the move, I think, in the first place.
Right. I understand that aspect of it. Look, you obviously got to get, if you're going to deal them, you have to get this done not long after the start of the new league year, right?
Really right at it, because
Right.
I've made the point too. If you're Pittsburgh, you can't be waiting around until late March, early April to see what happens with Stafford and lose out on all the other quarterbacks if Stafford were to stay. And so there's an urgency for the Rams too. They want to get clarity on the situation. They drug out until late July last year. They need to know who their quarterback's going to be to court their free agents and chart their offseason plan, especially for a contending team like them. So hopefully it gets resolved here. Really, I would say right around the start of the legal tampering period, March 10th.
Looks like he's due 23 million base salary in 2025 right now. It looks like there's a roster bonus of 4 million due by March 19th. There, but the whole aspect of this is he's probably not going to want to play under those terms of that contract. So any team that uh, was going to trade for him would have to also be able to talk to him to figure out, what he wants money wise, right?
And what are we thinking on that? 40 million as a floor, higher than that?
Well, let's look at the quarterback market again real quick. And right now, he's obviously, as he's still on his current contract, $40 million APY technically. You'd have to think that he's going to want that he thinks that he's worth at least that.
Sure.
In other words, hold, retain that value. But with the, escalation of the salary cap and all like that, and he's probably thinking, 40 million new money average is my floor.
Right. And then probably once in that 45 to 50 range
Right.
would be his ideal, I'm guessing.
Right. And look, the Steelers obviously could swing something like that when it comes to cash and cap and all like that this offseason. We've already talked about that they've got cash to spend and they definitely have cap to spend. If you went that route, you're essentially probably planning on him being your quarterback for at least the next 2 years, right?
Sure. I just go back to what I said a couple podcasts ago. How much longer does Stafford intend to play for? You don't want this to be a year-to-year thing where you may only get this guy for one season. You pay him all this money, you trade whatever the compensation is, and then next year he says, I'm walking away. I'm retiring. I've done all that I need to do, and I'm good. You don't want to be in that situation, and you're worried at a guy that's 37 that's had some injury issues lately, even though he's played through it. You worry about how long will you have Matthew Stafford?
Throwing around some of these names that obviously been discussed, a little bit ad nauseum to this point already of veteran guys that could end up playing next year, not named Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Let's kind of roll through the list here. Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers. Let's say something happens with Derek Carr, and he's not retained or is winds up elsewhere. Geno Smith's another one people are kind of wondering about this offseason. Sam Darnold's another one there. And I really think that's kind of the veteran list of those group of guys of 5, I think that I just named there. Which one would you lean toward and which one gives the Pittsburgh Steelers the best chance of getting past the non-playoff win since 2016? I think the answer's easy, but I just take your temperature here.
When I did that Steelers quarterback option pros and cons article a week or two ago, I think Stafford was second on my interest level behind re-signing Justin Fields. And so of that group, which didn't include Fields, I'll take Stafford for sure. And to your point about Tomlin, and if you were to require Stafford, it kind of runs counter to the whole mobility thing. The answer is, well, he's just the most talented guy. He's the best quarterback of the possible options. And so we'll sacrifice some of that mobility to get just the best passer, which should be the focus. Quarterback play is still primarily done from the pocket. Stafford would give you in the here and now the best chance to win, to break the playoff drought. Question becomes, do you truly become Super Bowl contenders with Stafford to compete and combat Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Josh Allen? That's debatable, but Stafford gets you closer than any quarterback has since been retired.
Right. And that includes Russell Wilson. If we were to throw Russell Wilson into the conversation now, gives you a better chance with Stafford than Russell Wilson, correct?
Yes.
All right. At this point, you know, you follow the smoke, right? And there's a lot of smoke concerning Stafford just in general, not necessarily just the Pittsburgh Steelers, because obviously, I mean, I think if you're the Raiders, you're looking hard at this as well too, right? And I think Raiders were a team that was mentioned.
Forget the whole list. There were a couple of them. Certainly, Pittsburgh is not the only team. Cleveland was mentioned, although I have no idea how they would even handle that financially with the Watson contract. But certainly, every quarterback needy team, I would imagine, would be showing interest, whether that's the Giants, the Jets, the Raiders, as you mentioned, basically anyone with the quarterback need, because he will be the biggest prize. What will be the trade compensation report came out that teams believe it would take a first round pick, or the Rams would at least be asking for and pushing to get back a first round pick. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think it'll take a one to get Stafford, knowing the money you're going to have to pay him. But what do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I think you do. If you're a team trying to acquire him, you try everything in your power not to include a first with that, whatever that looks like from that point forward.
Probably a two.
Yeah, or maybe a three this year and a two next year or something like that.
Okay, fair enough. So,
But anything but a one.
that's a good way to frame it. Yeah, anything but a one for Matthew Stafford. So we'll see. Like you said, the smoke's really starting to circulate. The combine's probably going to intensify things all the more, and likely, hopefully, offer some clarity over Stafford's future. Again, I think decision time for all parties has to come within the next 2.5 weeks.
All right, based on what's out there as of this morning, what does your heart of hearts tell you, just as far as Matthew Stafford, A, either staying with the Rams, or B, being on another team?
These things are unpredictable, and I don't want to sit there and say Stafford's definitely gone, because, as you've said, as the reporting is still even indicated, the Rams do want him back. And if they lose Stafford, if they trade him away, I truly don't know how they're going to build as competitive of a team. But there is just so much out there. If you let him speak with other teams, clearly you have issues with a contract. They had issues last year. They barely got it done. My gut's telling me right now he's playing elsewhere. Now, is that Pittsburgh? I don't know. I have no idea, but I don't think he's a Ram next year.
I'm going to go the opposite way. I think they find a way to get this thing done with him.
Okay, fair enough. And that's certainly possible. I don't want to get so short sighted of it, but there's just so much smoke, and it's no longer the speculation and just the theoretical of, oh, maybe they don't get something done and they trade him. I mean, he's talking to other teams. They're talking trade compensation. It's hard to do those things and not trade the guy.
Right. And once again, the start of the new league year, I guess, would be technically on come Wednesday, be 2 weeks away. So and then the roster bonus with him is not too far after that. So this all should come to a head with him and obviously several others here pretty quickly.
Dave, anything else that we're missing? Any other news that came across? It was a relatively quiet weekend. Have the NFL Combine coming up. We can discuss that some. We'll discuss it more, I'm sure, for Wednesday's show as well, although we'll also be talking about Omar Khan. He'll speak to the media, do his media rounds on Tuesday, including being on the podium in front of the whole world at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So let's start there, actually, unless you had something else you wanted to pivot to. What are you hoping to hear from Omar Khan tomorrow? What do you expect to hear? What's your thoughts on him speaking to the media for the first time since the season ended?
Yeah, I would first like to. I mean, we know we're not going to get a lot out of him. He's got the Steeler way of giving information, but not giving information, and he's slowly starting to kind of fine tune that in when it comes to that aspect. I'm sure he'll be asked about what direction he sees them going with the quarterback position, and he's gonna leave it open that they're probably still talking to everyone all involved and exploring all options. So I doubt we're going to get a finality on the direction of the quarterback position. I would expect him to be asked about position groups and what's the stronger of the position groups. And I would imagine he's going to say, defensive line's a deep class, and, running back's a deep class, and the offensive line class isn't all that great. I think you're gonna get the status quo line of there's players that can help us in this year's draft that sort of aspect there. And then I would expect him to be asked about what he why the team didn't get over the hump like they expected to do and last season and what kind of led to that overall and areas of where they think they need to improve and how much turnover of the actual roster is he expecting, just to kind of the status quo things that I don't think, even though they're questions that need to be asked, we're not going to probably come out with a lot of actual knowledge. He's going to be asked about several of these potential players that are coming up to be unrestricted free agents. I would be interested to see if he comes off of what maybe a tender will be, with Jaylen Warren. Will they go a second round tender? Will they go right of first refusal tender? He'll probably still say that they're working through all that. There's not a lot of to ask about when it comes to the salary cap aspect, because as we have mentioned, this team for this time of year is just it's not like you have a lot of decisions upcoming where you have to clear a lot of salary cap space here. So I would imagine, and I think last year I had Joe Clark try to sneak in a question about where they thought they might be from a cash spending perspective, something that Omar Khan is probably not, or no Steeler GM is used to being asked those kind of questions. And we obviously it's worth asking, but we didn't get a good answer out of that, as you'd probably imagine. But I don't know if we're going to get any real usable information out of this.
Agreed. Omar Khan, very buttoned up, in some ways even more so than Kevin Colbert, who wouldn't sing like a canary during these interviews and pressers anyway. But I think Colbert would even be a little more honest and transparent about draft class strengths and weaknesses. He would kind of walk through position group by position group. Here's what's strong. Here's what's weak. Khan really hasn't even done that. He'll just kind of sit there and say it's a good group overall. There's talent everywhere, and we think it's a deep draft and those kind of platitudes. So I'm not even sure how much we'll get from that. Obviously, as you said, he's not going to really tip his hand on the quarterback situation. At best, I'm hoping for some sort of timeline, some sort of timetable for when this decision will come. I'd love for him to be asked when you expect to have a decision. And some of these things are fluid and not all in team control, obviously, with unrestricted free agents and potential trades. But, I'd like to at least get some sort of insight there. Beyond that, I would like for him to at least be asked about Najee Harris and what his potential odds of return is. I know he was not going to give you a straight answer. He's not going to sit there and say yes or no, but just what would be the tone of the response from Omar Khan? Does it sound more positive? Does it sound more neutral, which I think would take it to be more negative in likelihood of Najee leaving? I'd like to hear about just the response from Khan and what just kind of the underlying subtext of his answer would be.
That, and hopefully he's asked about the wide receiver room last year and how earnest they were about. He's not going to probably go deep into the names of all the guys that the Steelers were supposedly, even Christian Kirk up until right before the deadline, and obviously all the stuff with Brandon Ayuk last offseason. But I'd like to get him to say how at least that we tried and tried and tried, and just things didn't break our way as far as maybe making that wide receiver room better last year.
Sure, maybe there'll be a reference to that, but I'm sure Khan's looking ahead. So will there be a question about how do you plan to address receiver this time around? Is it more free agency, which is the route I think they're going to take? Is it going to be more draft? What is his thoughts on the receiver draft class? Does he think it's strong? Most draftniks would say this is one of the weaker receiver classes in the last 5+ years. So maybe we get a little bit of information on that as well.
And maybe the thing that we'll be able to at least have an affirmative on of some tangible, usable information out of this next week out of Omar Khan is, can you get him to say that Broderick Jones will be the starting left tackle
Good
for the Steelers in 2025, and by byproduct will Fautano be the starting right tackle.
That's a good point. This time last year, it was Khan saying that Jones was going to move to left tackle. I think, quote, eventually was the word choice that Khan had used. And of course, Jones stayed at right tackle for 2024 with Moore at left tackle. And that's now the opportunity to kick Jones over. So that's something that I think Khan could potentially say in some sort of concrete detail. Good point by you.
And then, going forward with Broderick Jones, what has the side has the side that he's played impacted what we've seen on the field so far, and how confident, if indeed the plan is to move him over to the left side, are they expecting are they expecting first round talent out of him on the left side? What has gone on with Broderick Jones to date? Where is he at in his development? What are they expecting moving forward?
Sure. Talk about guys entering critical seasons. Is there any Steeler entering a more critical year than Broderick Jones?
No, because as we've seen over the past, sometimes it takes 3 or 4 years for some tackles around the league to develop. But I mean, he's logged enough snaps at this point, and if you move him over to the other side, that excuse is gone. So yeah, look, they need to figure out if Broderick Jones can be their starting left tackle, not only for 2025, but obviously at least several years beyond that in 2025.
Agreed. I know he's still young and there's been up and down play and there's been some injuries and shifting sides, but at some point it's sink or swim for a first round pick. And 2025 is the sink or swim year for Broderick Jones. And also after 2025, the 5th-year option decision will be due on him, correct? So
right.
even looking ahead after this year, that's his play in his upcoming season will dictate can he finally be a Steeler first round pick to get a 5th-year option exercise, because it's been a hot minute since that happened, Dave.
Right. I guess in some way, shape, or form, I would like a question thrown out at Khan about the running back position and the fungibility of it, and how he feels towards that, especially in light of this past year. There's a lot of talk right now because of obviously a couple of free agent running backs this past season switching teams and making huge impacts. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, you'd probably go down the line a little bit more, but you look back now and you do kind of wonder, how Najee Harris, you already mentioned Najee Harris situation and maybe how earnest they are at re-signing him, just kind of rolling back into the whole 5th-year option and how he answered that question originally, and how the kind of obligatory response was, we hope Najee's a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers for several years to come. And obviously that didn't happen last offseason, and now you're at a point where you're super close to Najee Harris just being allowed to ride off into the sunset, if you will.
Right. So gonna learn hopefully a little. Certainly would not expect to learn a lot from Omar Khan, but he'll speak, and usually he does multiple interviews, right? Isn't there one? He does one off to the side with Steelers media. He does the one on the podium. Doesn't he also do some of the news channels and some of those one-on-one interviews as well? So it's kind of like the Art Rooney tour, kind of packed into one day.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll obviously have a lot of quotes from him. We'll just have to see to what varying degrees are useful.
Agreed. All right, Dave, sticking with the NFL Combine, I think officially the on-field workouts begin Wednesday. That's with the specialists, but the NFL Network will broadcast the on-field workouts beginning Thursday with the defensive linemen. I want to double-check the schedule here, make sure I have that accurate. Yeah, Thursday, D-line and linebackers. Friday, DBs and tight ends. Saturday, quarterbacks, receivers, and running backs, and finishing things off Sunday with the offensive line. So D-line getting us started there Thursday, Dave. Really deep class. Going to be a lot of names for us to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. The most exciting time, I think, for Steeler fans when it comes to the Combine. starts with the really the first group of players here with the defensive line group, and we've talked quite a bit about how deep this class is, and the Steelers obviously have a huge need at the position. We expect them to address it early in the draft as well too. So yeah, absolutely. This defensive line class right out of chute will be the ones to watch.
Are there any names in that position group in particular you're especially excited to watch? I know we're going to be excited to watch them all. And for those who don't know, we'll have a tracker, a spreadsheet consistently and constantly updating on weigh-ins and for all the testing, the 40, the vert, 3-cone, etc. So be sure to follow us if you want to stay up to date on all the results, all the testing from the combine. But any D-line name or names in particular you really want to get a good sense of during the combine, Dave?
The answer would be yes. Man, where do you want to start here? I mean, we've already talked quite a bit about several of these guys, starting with I think Harmon out of Oregon, right? He's
Mhm.
one of the key names on the list to start paying attention to right out of chute. I think of all the guys. I mean, you got he did not go to any of the All-Star games, but I think that was by choice. I mean, he knows he's going to be a top round draft pick. He's also an underclassman. On top of it, another thing that's going to be encouraging for the Steelers. You look at just the initial measurables of him overall. I think originally we'll have to see what the fine tooth measurements come out with, but I think 6'5", 310 pounds. You've done, I think, a couple of looks at him already. Just impressive what the Steelers look for overall. So I don't think you can begin a list without having Derek Harmon out of Oregon on that list. Another one is the Ole Miss Walter Nolan, who I talked about right out of chute. I think is another guy that you've got to have your sights on early in this thing. A couple of Michigan guys, although I think one of them is likely to be off the board by the time the Steelers pick at 21 in Mason Graham. Just an incredible guys of his size and all just shouldn't be able to move like he moves and get the production that he's able to get, can move up and down the line. And then Kenneth Grant's going to be another one, a guy that just a big bodied guy, 6'3", 342 pounds, that just guys his size should not be able to move like he moves. I think him and Mason Graham are both underclassmen as well. And then you go down the list from there. We've talked quite a bit about the kid out of Toledo, Darius Alexander, is going to be someone to watch in the position groups. Oh Lord, moving on from there. I mean that's a good list. I want to see the conversations about Riley Mills out of Notre Dame, a guy that was impacted by injury, a guy who right now I think a lot of people have either being like a sixth, seventh, or even an undrafted guy. I think this is a guy that when he was healthy and on the field was very productive, and even though he's now deemed coming off this injury and it might be a little while for him, it's guy I think the Steelers should talk to. Obviously, we're not going to see him on the field or do anything due to the injury issues that he has had. Oh, a few later round guys.
How about your guy, Nebraska's Ty Robinson? How will he run?
Yeah,
He's kind of a run stuffer, but could he show a little more athleticism than maybe people give him credit for?
yeah. I don't think he had the greatest of weeks at the Senior Bowl there, so he's definitely got reason to kind of improve on what he has out there so far this offseason. He's another interesting guy to watch. Tyleik Williams, I think, is another guy that you've written and talked about a little bit out of Ohio State, which will be another one that kind of fits what the Steelers look for.
Yeah, big interior plugger, but some burst and some sub-package ability for Tyleik Williams. I think certainly Kenneth Grant's going to be maybe one of the stars of the combine for a guy his frame. We may see testing we've not seen before, somebody of that mass. He's going to Should easily run under 5 seconds. The question is, it'll be 4 point what? 4.7, 4.8. Should be really fun to watch. How about the other kid? I know you're not a big fan of him, and I don't have final thoughts on him either, but I've watched a ton of Kentucky tape, and he just kind of pops from time to time. Dion Walker, another big athletic guy. Will he look like Grant in the way he moves and fluidity and drills? Will he kind of move the same type of way? Will you see some of the fluidity, or will it feel a little inconsistent, a little tall, a little stiff? But that's a really interesting guy that when he flashes, there's some really impressive tape. I know you had concerns with consistency and conditioning and just overall having even tape out there with Walker from Kentucky.
Yeah, I don't view him as a first round guy from what I've seen. More potentially late. I think he could potentially, if the Steelers win another direction other than defensive line in the first round, I think he would potentially make sense, as a second or third round guy overall. But I think just due to his pedigree and his size and everything like that, he's definitely going to be a guy that I think the Steelers give attention to over this next week.
With Alexander, we'll see how he tests. I think the testing will just be okay, not going to be terrible. I'm not expecting to be blown away by Darius Alexander. I didn't get that feel on tape, but the tape, of course, is very good. The concern may end up being average athleticism with his age being 25. Will that work against him? But the really impressive guy that had a great Senior Bowl week, Vernon Broughton from Texas. When I did report on him, I didn't feel like he was a great athlete. I thought he was really a rotational base end run stuffer, that kind of guy. But reading around some other reports, some other outlets were higher on his athleticism, his burst. So I want to see his 10 split, want to see the vertical, kind of measure that explosiveness. Of course, for these big linemen, the 40 time matters less. The 10 split is going to matter a whole lot more. So, that's one of those guys where you might watch him test and he might surprise me, and I'll have to kind of go back and think about, okay, did I underestimate and undervalue his athleticism because I didn't really see it on tape? But that's a later, that's a mid-round, late round kind of a guy to keep an eye on.
How much do you know about Alfred Collins out of Texas so far? I have not watched him yet.
I didn't write the report on him. I did the report on Broughton. I think Collins has gotten more buzz than Broughton in terms of draft stock, but certainly one guy to check out.
All right. When's the last time that you remember us talking about a class of defensive linemen? I mean, you even have Cam Jackson down here listed at 6'6", 339. I mean, it's rare, that we see such a large group of guys, at least even from just a measurable standpoint, what the Steelers look for. And that's why, once again, a lot of people are talking about this defensive line class, because not only do a lot of them fit the Steelers from a measurable standpoint, but on-field talent as well.
Absolutely. And that doesn't even consider some of the tweener type guys like Jared Ivey from Ole Miss that Ross talked about. Is he going to be a defensive lineman? Will he be with the edge guys? I'm not even entirely sure what position group he's getting put in, but I'm sure he'll do D-line drills, edge drills, just to kind of show off versatility for NFL teams who might have a different evaluation on him. There's TJ Sanders. I mean, there's a whole list of names here to look at. And so that first day of on-field workouts that'll be televised will be maybe the most important day to the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Pittsburgh Steelers fans.
Yeah, where's our arm sizes at? We'll be going through that right out of the chute as well too. We should have those, I would think, within the next couple of days for at least the defensive line group to start looking at, from the old Alex Kozora, what the Steelers look for standpoint. Last year they sacrificed a little bit overall height in a guy like Fautano, but still, the reason they were attracted to him was his athletic ability and his overall length, especially when it came to his arm length.
Right. I think he had 34-inch arms, which is good length for a tackle, especially for somebody that was a little bit shorter at 6'4" and change. Believe the weigh-ins and measurements take place the same day they work out. And so we should know those Thursday before players get on the track for the 40.
Right.
Any other combine? Well, we can probably save some of the combine conversation for Wednesday to look at the other groups overall. But yeah, I think the consensus is it's not an amazing class of blue chip prospects at the top end, but there's good depth. We know the positions it's deep at. It's deep at running back, defensive line, Those are probably the strongest groups. Tight end is also a really strong group, although a lesser need for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so those will be the ones to really take a look at. But when at position groups where it's not as strong, at receiver, I think the corner class is okay. Who can separate? Who can stand out from a weaker class? And that could be where you really boost your value and stand out in a class that may not be regarded as strong this year as other years. I think receiver in general, it's kind of jumbled up. A lot of day two type of guys. There isn't even a clear number one receiver in this class. McMillan from Arizona is kind of viewed as that top guy, but it's not a slam dunk as other years. Got Luther Burton, Abuka. I really want to see how he runs, how he tests. That's a guy that I really will focus in on to determine, okay, kind of what is the upside, the ceiling on this guy. And so, that's a situation where can you separate from the pack based on a really good combine workout?
Interested to see, obviously, because of the Steelers' need. You mentioned wide receiver. We think they might be interested in a running back in this class, so we'll be paying attention to that group. And cornerback class, probably top heavy overall, but there's still some talented guys. Thomas out of Florida State, interested to kind of watch him go through the paces this next week. And Kobe Bryant, I think, out of Kansas is another one I'm want to learn more about moving on into this offseason as well.
Yeah, I think Azariah Thomas from Florida State's going to crush the combine. There's a super fluid, top end athlete with size and length. He's just raw, really a 1 year starter. Had a sub package role in 2023 with the Seminoles. Can get grabby, can get panicky, but all the traits and tools are there. That's a guy that probably is going to earn a lot of buzz. I think probably ends up in that late first round conversation. You kind of bet on some of the tools and traits that he'll develop. Probably more of a second round talent in terms of where he's at right now, but that kind of body type, that kind of build, and I'm assuming the testing's going to match, is going to probably push Thomas up.
Yeah, agreed. Edge rushers, guys that maybe the Steelers could get a hold of, I don't know, 6th, 7th round. I'll be on the lookout for some of those. Obviously, don't expect the team to address the outside linebacker position. Top half of this draft, I could foresee maybe an interest in a late round guy. I was going through when putting these sheets together. I was like, "Where's my guy Johnny Walker at?" Coming out, because learned a lot about him during the Shrine Bowl week. He had a great Shrine Bowl game overall, and then lo and behold, I had to go back through the list a couple of times to make sure I didn't miss him. But he seems to have been a combine snub. So obviously, we'll continue to have my eye on him once these pro days get going. I would not be surprised if the Steelers had someone there looking at Johnny Walker, but then trying to look at I think this is a good year to take a flyer on a later round edge rusher that's 6'3", 245, 255, a kind of guy that you think could come in and be the bottom of that outside linebacker group for the Steelers that can also play on special teams. So I'll be paying attention to kind of the later round guys at the combine at that position group.
Sure, Pittsburgh values its depth as they should, and so a late round selection would not be the worst idea to stay 4 deep at outside linebacker. And while we won't see Walker, should mention Steelers' current outside linebackers coach Denzel Martin played at Missouri, so maybe he's got a little intel on Johnny Walker.
There you go.
One other name I'll just mention, and there's a million of them. We'll talk about it, especially post combine once we talk about results. Darian Porter, the corner from Iowa State, he's probably going to run one of the fastest 40s, or reports that he could challenge to be the fastest 40 at Indy this year. I'm not worried about will he run well. I want to see kind of the agility drills. How will he look in some of the positional drills as well with his turn, his fluidity. He's a tall guy. He's a long guy. He's a former receiver. Pittsburgh has gravitated towards those types of guys, receiver converted to corner that's tall and long and that avatar type of corner. So what's his 3-cone if he does it? How does he look in drills? Does he pop up? Is he stiff? Does he feel like a guy's going to have to play safety or not? I think the straight line speed's not going to be a concern, but you're talking maybe day 2 for him with Darian Porter. Can he move like a corner and not just be a straight line, linear guy? That's going to be key.
As far as all the on the field drills go, obviously non-timed and non-measurable type stuff, is there a better drill than watching to learn about some of these corners and safeties when it comes to that back pedal and turn flip drill?
No, I'm with you 100%, Dave. It's a real good opportunity to see these guys in their pedal, in their turn, as you can run a great 40, but that's where it goes from time speed to game speed. Can you play fast? If you're stiff, if you're rigid, if you're tall and high, and Porter's a pretty tall, high cut kind of a guy, can you turn and run with these guys? That's the name of the game. And so it's a really good way to translate, on these drills to on-field Sunday application.
Absolutely. As far as the offensive line class goes, I think there's I don't think it's a great year to be in the hunt for a center, and luckily the Steelers aren't. I think it'd be interesting to watch some of these listed tackles from a measurable standpoint. Several of these tackles I think are going to end up having to be kicked inside the guard, and I think that could kind of decrease the overall number of kind of top tackles in this group. I think, obviously, I think Kelvin Banks out of Texas is someone that a lot of people are high on that'll go early. I think Will Campbell out of LSU is another one. Who are a couple of the other top tackles in this group?
Yeah, got the Texas kids. Cam Williams from Texas, Banks' teammate. I wasn't super high on Williams. There's Josh Simmons from Ohio State that could be viewed as one of the top offensive linemen in this year's class. There's some medical. So remember the combine, the main intent for its invention, creation was for the medical and for the character interview aspect of things. Obviously, the 40 steals the show, but where teams really get value is a lot of the behind the scenes type of action. Josh Connerly from Oregon's going to be probably one of the top tackles taken as well, and so those are some of the names there. Marcus Mbaugh from Purdue is a guy that one of those potential conversion guys that played right tackle his last 2 years at Purdue. I like him better as a guard. Really interesting tape. He's athletic. He's twerky. He's got power. He's got violence in his hands. His chops, the way he can knock down hands, is really inventive and creative for pretty young offensive lineman. He was a guard in 2022. Actually had some good reps against Keanu Benton. I was going back and watching that game in 2022 against the Badgers. That's a guy that probably needs to kick back inside to guard, but if he does, cleans up his technique a little bit, coordinate his feet and his hands, his punch, gets a little bit stronger, that could be a real good guard. Not going to be the guy for Pittsburgh, going to be a top 50 pick, but just one name that should test exceedingly well. This guy looks like a tight end out there.
Yeah, and I think not that you read too much into it, but his actual listing on the NFL.com combine page now is at guard.
Okay.
They have him at 6'4", 309. Will he hit that 6'4"? More than likely, these guys are as much of a half inch off. So will he be slightly? Does he look every bit of 6'4", or do you think he comes in at 6'3" and 3/4 or something?
Well, he was at the Senior Bowl and measured in. Now, sometimes there are discrepancies between combine and All-Star game measurements by a little bit, but he should basically be in the same vein. His arm length was 33 inches, which isn't to me the reason why I would kick him inside to guard. I just thought overall he struggled against speed rushers, would play a little top heavy, bend at the waist, and maybe a lack of length has something to do with that. But I mean, the size profile isn't great for a tackle, but I just look at the tape overall. I just think it could be a really good guard just based on his play style, his strengths, his weaknesses.
What was his height at the Senior Bowl? I don't have that pulled up in front.
I'll pull it up. I mean, it came in over 6'4". I don't know
Okay.
exactly what it was, 6'4" and change. Give me 1 second. And so, he should be above 6'4" for the combine, even if it's an eighth of an inch change from how they measure things at Indy versus in Mobile. Yeah, 6'04", 309, 33-inch arms was what Mbaugh came in at.
Any free safeties you got your eye on? I haven't even touched that class yet.
Yeah, I've gone through a little bit of it. There's Craig Woodson from Cal. It's going to be more of a day 3 type of guy, super experienced, versatile, a hitter. I want to see how he tests. I didn't think his athleticism was anything more than average on tape. I think he'll jump well. He was a high jumper in high school, and so I think some of that testing will be good. His 40, if he can be in the low 4.5s, that'd be fantastic for Craig Woodson. And also notable because current Steelers DB's coach, Gerald Alexander, recruited Craig Woodson to Cal. He was a light recruit from, I believe, Texas, didn't have a lot of interest, and so Cal kind of made sense. He had a elementary friend that was also going to Cal that kind of helped push him there. But Jared Alexander recruited him there, coached him in 2019 before he then left for Miami. Could to be a reunion at the NFL level. Wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. Yeah, the safety class overall, he's not the best. There's the South Carolina kid that's kind of maybe a hybrid type of guy there. There's the Penn State names, Jalen Reed, Winston as well. So we'll see those guys work out at Indy.
What do you think about Jordan Clark, Ryan Clark's son, being snubbed from the combine?
I was disappointed by that. Yeah, I thought he was going to be able to get a nod there, potential nickel type at the NFL level. So, yeah, I was bummed by that.
Are we going to see some sons of some Steelers wind up on at least, if not drafted, Jordan Clark's going to get drafted though, right?
I don't know exactly where his projection is at. The combine snub is not a great sign for that, but I could still certainly see a day 3 selection on Clark.
Right, and obviously the Bruner kid at linebacker is going to get drafted, I think, this year. So that'll be interesting to see. I have a feeling we're one of those two kids, if not both of them, wind up in the black and gold this summer.
And Dino Tomlin, technically draft eligible. He's not going to get drafted, but will he end up in a camp somewhere? Just want to see what happens there. It's Mike Tomlin's kid.
All right.
All right, Dave, anything else to discuss? Again, we'll hit the combine more throughout the week. We'll do it Wednesday, Friday, Monday. It'll be a combine packed show, so we won't give all of our thoughts right now. Any other stories to discuss, Dave?
Did we hit all of them? What has Ben Roethlisberger said anything worthwhile lately?
No, I don't think he said anything. He'll have his podcast on Tuesday. I thought there was one other thing I wanted to bring up. Oh, I was gonna mention this. I was looking over the NFL free agent list, and we'll walk through that more in upcoming shows as well. And I said on a recent show, maybe Friday show, wasn't entirely sure what would be the better path for Pittsburgh to address cornerback, free agency, or the draft. Certainly a case to do both, and they probably will do both. But I was looking over the list of free agent to be names at corner, Dave. It is a stacked corner class. I didn't realize how many good options there were at corner. And so, talk about those positions Pittsburgh could spend good money on. We mentioned receiver. We talked about corner as well, but I really think this is a year to attack one of those really slot or outside cornerback because there is a ton of good names that could hit the market.
Yeah, and you had already talked about the Raiders kid, right?
Nate Hobbs, yeah, it's one of my
Right.
top guys on my list. Absolutely.
Right. So, and then obviously over the course of the next 2 weeks, it'll be interesting to see if there are any salary cap cuts, veterans.
Sure, I'll just give you a list of names. I'm not saying these all have to be your choice or anyone's top name, but just the names that could potentially be out there. Carlton Davis from the Lions, Charvarius Ward from the Niners, DJ Reed from the Jets. I've always been a fan of Jonathan Jones from the Patriots. He's older, but I've always liked his game since he came out of Auburn. Rasul Douglas, of course, former Steeler Mike Hilton. Who else will be out there? Mike Hughes from the Falcons, a sneaky name, not getting a lot of buzz right now. Jordan Lewis from Dallas, the nickel. The Cowboys would like to re-sign him, but we'll see what happens there. Vontae Maddox from the Eagles, another nickel. Pitt kid. Asante Samuel Jr., who I think Pittsburgh had some interest in coming out of the draft a couple years back. So, I mean, there's just, Benjamin St. Juste from Washington, big, long corner. The list goes on and on, Dave. There's a ton of interesting names out there.
Yeah, we expect them to sign somebody from that position group during free agency. And as we talked about the other day, a free agent from that position group could be somebody that threatens even that Cameron Hayward hierarchy line of APY.
Sure. And while I may defend Dante Jackson more than most, it's hard to look at those listed names and sit there and say just re-sign Dante Jackson because there are so many potential upgrades on the market that just bringing back Dante Jackson would feel like a disappointment.
I'm like I've kind of stated in the past, I'm not opposed to Jackson coming back, but if he does, it's got to be at a minimum or near minimum salary.
And I think he'll get more than that just on virtue of having those 5 picks last year, having some good tape before all the injuries and just poor play caused him to regress the back half of the season. So, yeah, I think he'll end up getting, he played for $7 million this year. think he's probably looking to get about the same for 2025 would be my guess.
Okay. I'm not spending that kind of money on him for sure.
Right, especially when you have all the other options out there, which
Right.
granted will probably be more expensive. Travarius Ward, DJ Reed certainly will cost more than Dante Jackson, but I think it's worth the upgrade there. Pittsburgh has the money to spend. You get, again, take your pick of any of those names on the list. Let's just say DJ Reed opposite Joey Porter Jr. You get me Nate Hobbs in the slot. Even if you don't, I mean, you got a couple of good corners out there. You're really boosting your secondary.
Agreed.
I just want to mention one last thing. Going back to the draft here quickly. One quarterback, what day are the quarterbacks throwing? What day is that? Saturday with the receivers and running backs. A name that has kind of drawn some buzz the last 2-3 weeks. I know Greg Cosell spoke really highly of him. So I was like, I got to watch this guy, Tyler Shuck from Louisville, regarded as a weaker quarterback class. That's kind of a sleeper that could emerge. The issue with him, he's 25, will be 26 later this year. He's got some medical concerns. He basically missed almost 3 straight years with broken bones, collarbones, and leg injuries, but good tape. I mean, he's got prototypical size at 6'5", 224, one of the more kind of old school pocket passers, was productive this year at Louisville, felt like he elevated his teammates. I didn't see quite the buzz that some are giving him like Cosell. I think Cosell has him as his number 2 quarterback. He reminded me like Will Howard, but I liked Howard more. Howard's younger, thought a bit more accurate. The arm strength may be a bit better, a little more athletic, but he's kind of a Will Howard type Tyler Shuck. And so that's a guy that I like more than Jalen Milroe. I liked him more than Jackson Dart, who are getting, day 2 buzz. So I want to see Tyler Shuck spin it at Indy. He was at the Senior Bowl, and so we've already kind of seen him in more of those relative, peer-to-peer environments. But that's a guy that I think will probably be my number 4 quarterback on my board. And we're talking about Pittsburgh with day 2 quarterbacks. Would they have any interest there? Potentially. We talk a lot about, Milroe and Dart, although his stock seems to be, quote unquote on the rise. But Tyler Shuck, another name to consider in that maybe 3rd round range.
I think it's come out that Shadur Sanders isn't going to do anything at the combine, right? Except for meeting with teams. Have we heard anything on Cam Ward?
Correct. Yeah. Sanders won't throw. I have not heard what Ward's intentions are, but if I'm Cam Ward, I'm throwing. Other guys I'm competing with isn't throwing. I'm going to go out there and compete and spin it.
I agree. And Will Howard, somebody you've talked about quite a bit. Overall, this class isn't great, and people have known that for a while, though.
Right, but that's kind of where Shuck starts boosting himself because we kind of know about the woes that Milroe has. So I say that also. I wrote the report on Shuck. It's up today. So if people want to read it, it's a pretty comprehensive review of him. And so just another quarterback name we've not mentioned yet that's worth mentioning, and we'll see throwing at the Combine Saturday.
All right, good job.
All right, Dave, anything else? Feel free. If not, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, let's jump into the email machine here. From Craig Sampson, 3 points. If the Steelers had any semblance of a competent and innovative offensive scheme, I would be all for signing Sam Darnold. He's clearly has pedigree and shown he can play, but since we are stuck in 1970, we cannot accommodate this type of talent. Number 2, he says, Alex, why do you keep saying that we do not need another great receiver in this offense? I realize it is a run-first offense, but we had Van Jefferson and Mike Williams. I realize they are not great, but they didn't even sniff the ball most of the season. So what is the point of even getting another receiver?
Is he? I'm just understanding.
Let me read that again. Alex, why do you keep saying that we do not need another great receiver in this offense? I realize it is a run-first offense, but we had Van Jefferson and Mike Williams. I realize they are not great, but they didn't even sniff the ball most of the season. So what is the point of even getting another receiver? I guess is him kind of trying to recap. I don't remember you framing it that way. And lastly, the third thing he says, as a lifelong Steeler fan, I don't know what to get excited about for next year. I feel like it'll be like Groundhog Day again. No real changes and nothing to look forward to. I know the draft of free agency is coming, but that isn't going to change our lackluster, predictable, and boring offense. You think our offensive line will suddenly come together and get a Derrick Henry or Saquon, and we will light it up for 2,000 yards? He says, I'm so tired of the small progress here and there, and then we take 5 steps back. Thoughts on that? Lastly, he says, I saw something about Mike T not being a fan of throwing down the middle because of the risk of the turnovers. He says that is a pathetic excuse. Almost all teams do this, and yet the Steelers are okay with first down run, gain of 3, second down run, loss of 1, failed pass to George Pickens. This is a crazy town, he says.
All right, he's venting it out here today. I'm a little confused because in one portion, the part that addressed me was saying that why am I saying Pittsburgh does not need a great receiver, and then it ends by saying basically it doesn't matter who they bring at receiver because they're not going to get involved in the offense either way. So I'm not sure if he's trying to say that Pittsburgh should get a great receiver or there's no point in getting a great receiver. What I said was, I believe what the reference is when I had said Pittsburgh, they need a number 2 receiver. They need somebody that can, complement and be that number 2 option. They don't have to be this Pro Bowl kind of guy. If you can find that guy, fantastic. I will bring in an All Pro all day long. But I'm just understanding what the actual need is for this team. I certainly want and need more production than Van Jefferson, than Mike Williams. I said as much whenever I talked about that in our discussion on a previous recent episode, but I just know that you don't have to have a guy that's going to come in and catch 100 balls in this offense because it's not going to be needed based on how it's constructed. You certainly need more production, more value, more injury protection for George Pickens. But, I'm okay if it's maybe a Darius Slayton or somebody in that ilk, whether or not a clear-cut number 1, because in this offense, if they can catch 40, 50 balls, 600, 700 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns, I think that's enough for this offense.
Look, they need to address this wide receiver position to some degree during free agency.
Agreed. I mean, listen, I would love for every position, every upgrade to be that home run all-star. That's fantastic, but you can't do that for every single position. And I know that Pittsburgh is not going to pay T. Higgins what a T. Higgins is going to merit, even if he gets the open market, which seems unlikely at this point. So kind of got to pick and choose your battles. You want to upgrade receiver, absolutely, but it doesn't always mean bringing in the number 1 free agent available.
Right. And as far as he says, not knowing what there is to get excited about this next season. Look, I mean, as usual, it revolves around the quarterback spot, and we don't have an answer on that yet. So, if it's Russ or if it's Fields for starters, if you bring either one of those guys back, it is kind of hard to get excited about this team. Even winning a playoff game, they got to prove they can do that. And if your excitement level is built around whether or not just this team can win a playoff game, then it is hard to get excited about that. But I mean, for this team to make any kind of a Super Bowl run in 2025, it's got to revolve around the quarterback position. And if it feels kind of settling for at this point, it makes kind of, then your expectation or then your excitement needs to be is about how good can this defense be, and can it be good enough to cover the averageness of the quarterback position on offense.
Adding Stafford would be exciting. There's no denying that if Pittsburgh were to pull that off. Yeah, I'm not going to try to spin it. We've talked about the purgatory, the rut the team is in, and the outlook for 2025 doesn't seem to be changing much unless a radical move like trading for Matthew Stafford were to take place. And so, point well taken. I would just also say with the offensive line, wouldn't say that how can you expect it to magically get better? It would be reasonable for this offensive line to ascend. And, you got a young guys up there with Frazier, McCormick, Fautanu getting healthy. We'll see about Broderick Jones, but not going to dismiss him entirely. So wouldn't be magic. It would be young offensive line coalescing and gaining experience and getting better, much in the way that it did way back when it started 2010s with Pouncey and DeCastro and Marcus Gilbert, et cetera. So, I've said it many times, assuming that there is no big quarterback shift and it's going to be Russ or Fields or somebody similar, the focus for 25 should be on developing this offensive line, turning them into a top 10 unit. And if they can do that, that's going to be huge for this offense in the short and long term.
All right. Jeremy P. writes in, Alex, I listened to your terrible take about Joey Porter Jr. and wondered what qualifies a second-year jump for a cornerback. While I'm not disagreeing with you, if you had told me before the season that Joey Porter Jr. wouldn't have a second-year jump and would have penalty issues, but would face wide receiver number ones all season and not give up a touchdown, I'm pretty sure most of us would have signed up for that. Is JPJ being viewed as not making a large second-year jump because of the level of competition he faced this year? If he had been matched up with wide receiver 2s and 3s all season, would his 2024 campaign and his progression be viewed differently?
It's a fair thought, and certainly a lot of this, what is a jump? What is a leap? What is a step? Those measures of progress are subjective. I guess the thought for a leap would have been for Porter to vault himself into top 10 cornerback conversation. I don't think he did that. I think if most people listed out their top 10 corners, Porter would fall outside of that. But yeah, my overall point was the penalties are a problem. No question about that. They must get better, be improved upon. He can't stack the penalties the way that he has. But putting that aside for just a moment, how did the rest of his season go? And I think overall it went pretty well.
Yeah, the most discouraging thing was him stacking the penalties the way he did in those four games or so. That was probably the most discouraging. I thought, as a whole, from a physical standpoint, he's made progression as far as being more active in run support, being more willing tackler for the most part. There, and obviously was asked to follow, number ones. There was a lot of, other than him not taking the football away, there was some things to be excited about with Joey Porter. If you throw out, had he not stacked the penalties that he stacked, it'd been a lot easier to diagnose his second year as a jump season.
Right, and I know the reader isn't even I don't think he's even disagreeing. I think we're in agreement actually, all of us here, where had he been on number 2, number 3 receivers, the perception might have been better, but I still think, like, he didn't have a bad game against number 1 from oh, he gave up this touchdown or he got burned or something like that against some of those top guys. There were some penalty problems against, T. Higgins, for example, but yeah, I think Porter had a better year than people give him credit for, while also acknowledging the penalties have to get reduced and cleaned up.
And he's always going to be a penalty guy, it feels like. It's just you can't stack him like he did in those games.
Right, right. But is Porter currently a top 10 corner in the NFL?
Oh, no.
I would agree without having a whole list of top 10 corners in front of me. And I feel like, okay, what does he have to do to get there then? Is it just the penalties?
It feels like that and taking the ball away a couple of times.
Yeah, that's probably fair. But I just think if you look at the overall body of work, because again, the penalties were a problem, but they were only a problem in a couple of games. His 14 penalties, I think, basically came in literally maybe 4 games. I mean, there was that 6 penalty disaster against the Bengals. There was 3 against Denver, I think 3 against Washington. That's where the bulk of them came from. So there were stretches where he played clean. It's just one happened, 2 happened, and 3 happened, and that was the issue.
All right, let's take one more from Caleb here. It says a couple of questions for the quote-unquote change that is coming. It does not appear that Arthur Smith is going anywhere anytime soon. With all the smoke that has come out about Russ and Smith butting heads, why would they even entertain the thought of bringing Russ back if they don't plan on changing the OC? Also, as far as draft goes, do you think they think the play of Jones and the injury to Fautano will force their hand in drafting a tackle somewhat soonish, meaning second to fourth round? All right, the first part of it is, I mean, let's address the Arthur Smith, Russell Wilson question if indeed Russell Wilson is re-signed. And you can bet that if Russell Wilson is re-signed, a lot of the offseason questioning whenever Russ and Arthur Smith do meet the media will be about differences maybe that they did have last year and how they're going to go about overcoming those. So that question's more of yeah, we could speculate why would they even entertain, let's wait to see what happens with Russ and if indeed he is the guy.
Yeah, that's fair overall. Again, I know why Russ wants to come back. He does not want to be on his third team in 3 years. That's really where you earn the journeyman label of bouncing around team to team. You don't want to have to move yourself, your family, and just have that uncertainty of I don't know where I'm going to play the next year. And so he'd like some continuity, some stability. And again, if he doesn't stay in Pittsburgh, where does he go where he can compete and win and at least try to make a playoff push? There aren't a whole lot of other great
Right.
options out there. Go to the Giants, go to Cleveland, go to Tennessee. You're in rougher situations overall. And so Russ has all the incentives in the world to want to stay in Pittsburgh. Would Arthur Smith want him back? Maybe, maybe not. But ultimately, it's not Arthur Smith's call. He has input on the decision. He can offer his thoughts on what he would like to see, but he's not the decision maker. And so that is above his pay grade. And that's why those two could reunite.
All right. The second part here. Do you think they will be drafting a tackle somewhat soonish?
No, short answer. I don't think it depends how you define somewhat soonish. I
He
think a
says
veteran.
second to fourth round.
No, I don't think it's going to be that high. I mean, there's going to be a need there. I think getting a veteran tackle this offseason with some positional flexibility would be nice because behind Jones and Fautanu isn't much, assuming that Dan Moore walks, which is high likelihood. And I think Jones will need the mentorship and be someone to push him instead of just being handed the job without any sort of potential semblance of competition. That's a guy that coaches have talked about kind of needing a fire lit under him. I think a veteran option would be a better route to go than a draft pick. Maybe late. I mean, it could be a day 3 type of situation, but I wouldn't call it a soonish type of position to be selected.
I would agree with you because they've got so many other needs that they need to address. Where if you did take a tackle, he'd be a measurable guy late in the draft.
Agreed, 100%.
One more from Brett Mile here. Now that we've entered draft season, I want to point out another trend this team needs to break. Drafting for need instead of impact, he says. We have seen the team say they draft the best player available while clearly choosing to fill a need, even if they have to reach between Artie Burns, Terrell Edmonds, Pickett, Najee, just to name a few guys drafted in the first who were probably at least second, maybe even third round guys. Reality is the team didn't get impact and in most cases didn't even really solve the position in the short term. He has in parentheses Pickett and Burns. The proof is in the pudding. You haven't picked up a fifth-year option on a player you drafted since what? In fact, the best use of a first-round pick in the recent years has been to trade it away, a la Minka. Is it time to get back to getting guys who can make an impact that at least reach a second contract? I mean, Alex and I have talked a lot about this, how the last several drafts, especially when it comes to first rounders, they've not done a good job of this is a team that likes to say that they build to the draft. This is a team that likes to get multiple first rounders over a course of 2, 3, 4 years become second contract players, and they obviously have not done that. Now, the whole need versus best player available, Omar Khan will tell you that if they have two guys relatively close in grading, they're going to probably lean to position of need overall, and that's somewhat understandable there. But in the flip side, if there is a guy, even if it is an edge guy at this point, even if it is, I mean, I hate to throw center in there because, but you cannot turn down the chance to draft a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. There's always a balance and a line to walk. I've always referred to Pittsburgh. They draft where need and value intersect at its highest point. And most teams draft for need, unless you're just a loaded roster and you're picking in the 30s, 30, 31, 32, you probably have a need somewhere that you have to address. There's pressure to play these rookies right away. Then it's not like the old school days where they sit for 2 years and bide their time. And so there's an urgency to get those guys on the field, which often coincides with need. So, I mean, yeah, you can. I would just say that at least there are different, to some degree, different cooks in the kitchen. A lot of those picks you mentioned referenced were under the Colbert era and his scouting staff, and the scouting staff has turned over greatly. Now, of course, Mike Tomlin is still in Pittsburgh, but nothing we can do about that. But yeah, I mean, I would say that Pittsburgh has to draft better, absolutely. But to me, it's less about need. It's just evaluating talent better. You can still draft for need and evaluate talent and find more talented players at positions of need than what Pittsburgh has done in recent years.
And look, it's still early in this. We're still learning about a lot of these players, and we'll learn a lot more about them over the course of the next week of the combine and the week following that as we get deeper into the tape and all like that. Is there one player from where we sit right now in this process, Alex, and it's way too early, I understand that. Is there one player the Steelers could be potentially on the still have on the board for them that would not that would fit potentially best player available, but not necessarily be a position of need, that there could be conversations 2 years from now saying, oh man, they shouldn't have passed on that guy? I've got
I
one in
think
my head.
I think I know where you're going to go. I think one of the tight ends, Tyler
Yeah.
Warren from Penn State, or even Colston Loveland from Michigan, who some people like more than Tyler Warren, where there's super first round talent there with those guys. It's not a position of need with Pittsburgh pass, and one of those guys becomes the next Kelsey type of guy. That's where my mind first went, and I think yours did as well.
Yeah, that's mine as well too. Especially to hear, I think Daniel Jeremiah talk this past week about, I think how he didn't he in so many words say he's got Loveland rated higher,
I believe so. Yes.
and the tight end class is. I mean, you this far out, it is still way far out. But is there a scenario where potentially maybe Tyler Warren could be on the board at 21? It feels to me, at least from where I sit right now, it feels like there's a chance that could happen.
Sure. There's a chance. Now, the lack of quarterbacks won't push down the group the way that it did last year when 6 went off from the top 12 picks, which really helped facilitate guys like
Right.
Fautanu to get to Pittsburgh selection at number 20. So maybe a little less likely this year. But if Loveland's the first tight end off the board, which is not unreasonable, will 2 tight ends go in the top 20? You could sit there and say no. So, yeah, there's a chance.
Right. How tempted would you be to go after a guy, a clean, I think you know what his floor is, right? Uh, and it would make it for an interesting conversation if he was on the board, especially with how deep this defensive line class is, and obviously how that ended up shaking out in the first round, and who you thought maybe could get to you in the second round and all. It would make for an interesting conversation about Tyler Warren. Look, that is a guy that can do a lot of things for you.
Yeah, in a tight end central offense. So it would. I still suspect Pittsburgh would pass, but
Right.
again, would be a very interesting conversation of question.
What do you think of the overall sentiment of what Brett's trying to say here?
I mean, I agree. Basically, the sentiment comes down to draft better. Pittsburgh is a team that
Right.
builds through the draft. They're not drafting well, and I think that is certainly a core issue for why this team has stagnated and has struggled. And you can walk through all the names you mentioned and others and sit there and say it's not good enough for a team that has, when they won the Super Bowls, they were drafting at a home run, record rate. They were just hitting all those picks. You look at the first couple of Colbert classes, that stretch really from like 2000 to 2007 was just hit after hit, gem after gem, and Pittsburgh has struggled to capture some of that magic. So, I think it gets a little more nuanced in the need conversation versus luxury. I might disagree a little bit there with the sentiment, but the overall thought of they need to draft better, 100% correct.
I agree. All right. I got through most of the emails here, and I think we're running about hour and a half or so here. So probably let's take one more from our buddy Steel Pastor here real quick. Coming up on the favorite part of the year, he says NFL Combine and Draft. Question: exactly why does George Pickens need what does George Pickens need to do to be eligible for free agency next year? In other words, let's say he does a hold in this summer and he continues to hold out during the season. When does he actually need to play in games to keep himself eligible for free agency? Does he simply need to play the last 3 games? What he has to, what is it? 8 games?
It's
What is
6 for the credited season. You might know this better than I do.
Yeah.
Not even sure if it's changed at all with the 17-game season, if that's tweaked the rules from the L Bell days of him sitting out. While you look at that, I just should have mentioned this earlier. I have a live stream tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern time, so we can answer your questions. Just look at my YouTube channel, search it, and Dave and I will be on there live 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time to take your Steelers questions.
Yeah, I'm trying to see here. I want to say it's six games, I think. I'll have to double check that. I should know this like the back of my hand here, but I'll find out for sure when it comes to like holdout players and how many games they have to play in. But obviously he would have to play in X amount of games. I'm drawing a blank of what that number is right now.
Right. So maybe we'll get some clarification for the next show or tonight's live stream, but probably not a scenario in which we'll have to worry about. But I understand it's good to at least ask the question and just wonder if Pickens were to go down that road. But again, I don't think that's going to occur.
Yeah, I don't think so either. But I'll try to effort that. Just trying to having a hard time doing it on the fly here. Still, Pastor. Okay. Anything else you want to get to here?
Pirates game canceled today. I'm bummed. Paul Skeens was supposed to pitch. Weather raining that one out. And Daniel Jeremiah just posted his updated top 50 board. He's got Tyler Warren 5th on that list, which actually is above Loveland, who's at 7. So 2 tight ends in the top 10 to kind of go back to that rare talent at tight end. Anyone else? What does he have Derek Harmon at? Does he have Harmon in his top 50? He's got him 26. So that's almost in Steelers range right there.
Where's he have Nolan at?
Walter Nolan is at 27, so they're riding shotgun.
All right, what about the big nose tackle from Michigan, defensive tackle?
Grant is at 20.
Okay.
Does he have Walker in his top 50? He does not. So, yeah, that's kind of what you talked about, maybe more of a day 2 guy, but I really want to see how he just moves and looks overall at the combine. Also his weight. I want to get his, I know he played at the Senior Bowl, but maybe his weight changed since then.
All right, you and I will be back at on Wednesday talking more about combine and whatever else comes down the old rabbit hole by then. And as Alex mentioned, we'll have a live stream later on Monday night. You can catch that on Alex's YouTube channel, and I'm sure we'll have a lot of draft questions and quarterback questions and a lot of good questions from the group like we usually do. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. And until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.